So today we are welcoming Jack Williamson, founder and CEO of Music and You, and Gill Dooley, CEO of AIM Ireland. Over to you, Jack and Gill.
Thanks, Michelle. Before we came on, Jack and I already addressed that there's probably going to be quite a few jokes about the nursery rhyme Jack and Jill, so get them out of your system during the Q&A if you need to. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am CEO of AIM Ireland, Ireland's trade association for those who work independently in music in Ireland. My background is predominantly in label life. I'm 20 years professionally working in music, and 15 of those in label life, and then the last 5 within artist management. So I've really kind of seen it from both sides. I've sat opposite incredible artist managers on the other side of the table when I've been within the label, and I've been the manager fighting desperately with the label to get what I need from my artist. So I've certainly seen both sides of the coin. I have gone to a lot of the genre meetups and all the wonderful activities that Emma are putting together. And I think that there's such a willingness from all of us for professional development and to upskill to better what we can provide for our artists. But I'm also seeing a consistent thread with managers that I speak to, even within the meetups, of just a need for us to have a little bit of time to focus on ourselves and our well-being. I think it's a really unique job. I don't know that there's another job like it in the world. And I think that there are many different approaches as to how you go about being an artist manager. And I suppose, really why I was passionate about putting together today's event was to ensure that, we're part of Emma, and we want to make sure that Emma not only provides advocacy and professional development opportunities, but also really has our back as artist managers, and make sure that we are listened to, that we can rely on each other as a network, not just for professional opportunities, but just for support. I think we can all work in a very siloed way, and that comes with enormous challenges. And so we needed to really bring in somebody. If it had been up to me, you would have 45 minutes of me giving out about everything that's tough on your mental health about being an artist manager. So we thought we might balance it out a little bit, which is why we decided to bring in Jack. And I'm going to let Jack introduce himself, and then we're going to get into our conversation.
Thank you so much, Jill. And it's lovely to see so many faces or names if your cameras aren't on today. So similar to Jill, I also come from a music industry background. I have worked in the industry for 20 years, primarily at major and independent record labels based out of the UK and London. But also I worked for 7 years in artist management as well, but both here in the UK and also out in America as well. So I've worked with artists at a developmental stage through to superstar status. I've traveled the world. I've been in tour buses. I've been in splitter vans. I know the challenges. I know the work in the 22-hour days, 7 days a week, 300 days a year, or sometimes 340 days a year. So I'm astute to an extent, or familiar with many of the challenges that come up in the lives of many of you that have joined this session today. I retrained as a psychotherapist back in 2018, and as a result I now work primarily with artists and people from the wider music industry to support the mental health and well-being of individuals and collectives, such as today with the wonderful event that Emma have put on in association with AIM as well. So hopefully some of the stuff that we share today and discuss today will be of help for you initially, and any questions that you have once me and Jill finish the conversation piece, hopefully we'll be able to answer that as well for you. So look forward to getting stuck in today.
Thanks for that, Jack. It was tough kind of trying to even put up structure on what we wanted to talk about today, because it's just so far reaching. And I think that we have to put it through a lens of the actual work and the day-to-day job of what artist management is. And the one term that comes up more than any other for me when I have conversations around artist managers and their well-being and their approach is boundaries. It seems to be very different for different artist manager relations. And I'm just wondering, Jack, in your opinion, like, how can we support artist managers to establish and communicate really, really clear boundaries? Because I think it's essential to like a healthy working relationship, and one that ensures that the both the artist and the manager feel kind of well respected, and that their well-being is being taken care of.
Definitely. What I'd love to see, if people have access to the reaction button, you can rate, you can do a heart shape, the thumbs up, like I've just got in there. How many people have problems with boundaries in their work life? Okay, I can see someone clapping there. I can see another person with a thumb up, another person. So I find that, and there's more that I can see on the second screen as well. So I'm just scrolling through to the second screen. So yeah, it's a common theme that kind of recurs through working with managers. I myself had massive issues with boundaries when I was a manager. And one of the things I find that really works is kind of establishing a framework within which you communicate, which we'll probably come on to later. But just to start with, it's looking at problems as they show up. And what I use is kind of a hurricane model, because sometimes with artists, with labels, with agents, with promoters, with publishers, whoever you're navigating with, is there can be boundary issues, because the relevance in terms of importance of what's coming in isn't actually set out and clearly defined. So I remember when I was in Brazil once, I was having to navigate a whole host of problems, and the artist I was with at the time was complaining because they didn't have Fiji water. And I was having to deal with the cancellation of a whole tour that was going on. And so that cancellation of a tour and having to reschedule a whole tour with a promoter and an agent was a Category 5 hurricane for me. The bottle of Fiji water, by comparison, was a tropical storm problem in my life and in the life of everyone else that was working with or around me. And so I was kind of trying to navigate that, and not to diminish the importance for that artist of that problem, but also trying to put it into perspective of, well, how important is this for you? So I find when you're going in to look at boundaries, it's actually having that communication with individuals and saying, how important is this for you right now? Is this something that needs to be dealt with urgently, that needs to get back to urgently, or is this something that can wait? Is this something that if I don't answer or respond to now means that my artist, I am going to miss out on something? Or is this something that can take time? Sometimes, just given the nature of our work, artists can get really excited about songs that they've demoed or recorded at the end of the session at 11 p.m. at night, 2 a.m. in the morning, and they can expect a response because they're so excited. And actually putting in those boundaries, putting in those parameters by actually establishing, I will get back to you at this point, but actually having a scale of, well, what is important, so that one, but sometimes gifting it to your artist and saying, can you categorize this in terms of importance, in terms of priority, to look at actually, does this need to be dealt with right this second, or can it wait? Because again, we all have our different levels of what's important and what we need, but actually being a bit more objective and looking and seeing, is a bottle of Fiji water as important as the cancellation of a whole tour or rescheduling of a whole tour? And that hopefully gives insight into actually, well, actually, maybe this isn't important, and maybe boundaries can be put in place to help navigate the workloads that we're all facing.
I think that's really excellently answered, Jack. I think you're kind of talking about triaging the workload and the importance. Where do relationship boundaries come in there? I mean, I'm sure we've all, seen artists who are best friends with their management, and those where it's purely a business relationship.
Yeah.
And some managers who came from, the teenage years up with an artist and have been there since day one learning on the job. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong for that, but where have you seen kind of specific instances of understanding where an artist manager's mental health, has and their needs has played a crucial role in navigating a challenge, and where have the blurred boundaries around what that relationship is affected that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good an important point to discuss there. I think, I'm not sure how familiar people are with this word, so I'll explain it, but management relationships with artists are often a very codependent relationship. And what I mean by codependent is there is a need for one to rely on the other, which is in essentially the case that an artist is relying on a manager to help them navigate their careers and their decisions. But often the challenge that managers face is that we can, as a manager, I'm speaking when I used to be a manager, when I say we, to include myself in this, we can lose ourselves in that relationship. So we lose the me, aka the manager, in the we, the relationship. and we sacrifice ourselves, our well-being, our needs for the artist, for the relationship. And so that then causes blurred lines, boundary issues, because if we're sacrificing a lot of ourselves, if we're continually showing up for that relationship, we aren't showing up for ourselves. And if we're putting ourselves second, then we're not able to give our best in other areas of our lives, maybe to our family, to our friends, to other aspects of our life. But equally, we may not be giving our best to that relationship because we may be sabotaging that relationship by putting a lot of pressure on that relationship. And that may cause issues in the relationship. So it's, how do you navigate separating the me, as in the manager, from the we of the relationship of the artist and the manager? And that then becomes by boundaries. It's putting in select times that you're available to speak. It's actually making sure that you have that priority system of when you get back to things, so that they don't feel neglected, they feel heard and understood. And also honoring that some relationships as managers are friendly. Some managers used to be friends before they became the manager of the artist. And it's just continually checking in with the artist relationship and the manager relationship and saying, how is this working? What can be done to be improved on this communication? What challenges are coming up, so that you can navigate that and actually know that, okay, this is first and foremost is a business relationship. Secondary may be a friendship, but first and foremost, it will always be a business relationship. Even if preceding that you were friends, it has now evolved into a business relationship, and therefore that has to be factored in.
I think that's a really excellent takeaway, that even if it started as a friendship, as long as you have started working together, the business element of it will now come first. And I think that that's important then for protecting the friendship element of the relationship as well. Should you end up not working together in the future, because we've all seen when that's gone terribly wrong. In your role, and with your retraining, how do you think we can kind of best guide music professionals, managers to strike that balance between providing support, but also maintaining, professional kind of expectations? I think expectations is a huge part of music management. And I think that it can lead us down the road of artist management becoming the blame game, right? The artist might get, I'm going to blame the manager. And then the manager says, well, I'm going to blame the label. And then the label says, well, I'm going to blame the booking agent. Because it can really become a kind of a negative spiral of a blame game. And I'm just wondering, when things get kind of tough, we've talked about boundaries, we've talked about clear communication, but do you have any insight into actually kind of striking that balance of what is a reasonable expectation?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the value around, whoever gets the win, and let's work as a team, as opposed to the blame game? What's been your experience of kind of how expectations are managed from the artist management point of view?
And I think this evolves depending on the position or the stage that you are a manager, because when you start out as an artist and when you're starting out as a manager, depending on the level of artist that they are, you may be the jack of all trades. You may be the tour manager, you may be the merch person, you may be the driver, you may be all these different hats and all these roles that you are navigating to help progress and further the career of the artist. And so at certain points, you may, because of a necessity, fulfill multiple roles within that. So when you're in that phase and stage of the relationship, it's making sure the artist understands that this is what you're doing to help further the needs and the goals and aspirations of the artist. And so managing the expectations that as and when the career of that artist evolves and expands and you're able to bring in and the budgets allow or facilitate the acquisition or the hiring of a tour manager, or you have a merch company that is able to sell the merch for you rather than you doing it yourself at a venue. All of those things, that then allows and facilitates you to look at that. But even more fundamentally than that, it's actually taking a moment to look at yourself and say, ask some questions to yourself. So is this role within my remit as an artist manager? Is what is being asked of me right here, right now, part of the remit of the artist manager role? If it is, then great. If it isn't, then is this something that is not within my skill set, not within my abilities? And do I then outsource or signpost or delegate to someone else? If it is within your skill set, is this something that is a temporary solution to a temporary problem that you can actually look at? So it's like, okay, well, I will be the merch manager for now, but maybe on the next tour, we bring one of your friends along to do the merch so I can focus on someone else, or we have the budget to hire someone to do that, whatever that may be. Also, another thing is, am I helping here? Am I helping this person? Am I helping this artist? Or am I rescuing them? And that's a really important question to ask yourself, because if you're helping them to help themselves, then they will hopefully the next time around be more agile, more resilient to do stuff. If you're rescuing them, then they are not having the ability to learn and grow. And that actually may be hindering them and your relationship, because then they become dependent on you in a different way to the way they depend on you as a manager. And so that may hinder you. Another thing to think about is, like I said before, but if it's maybe in the realm of mental health, am I qualified to help here? If not, do I need to speak to the trade associations? Do I need to speak to Emma? Do I need to speak to other people to actually signpost out to that support? And then also, do I have that signposting available to me? Where do I go? In my country, is there support available on the healthcare system? Obviously, sometimes these costings may be actually not available to these artists because of the price point that they're available, but there are services and provisions out there that can actually support artists so that you're not taken on the load. Because again, your role is a manager, your role isn't a therapist. And sometimes that line can be blurred as well. So going back to that question, is this role within my remit as a manager? If it is, yes. If it isn't, and you don't have the skill set, signpost, delegate. If it is, and if it isn't, but it is within your skill set, maybe it's a temporary solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, I think there's a reluctance a lot of the time to say, I don't know, I can't do that. It's not in my skill set. And sometimes that's driven purely from budgetary fear that you can't outsource it. And I still think even if you don't have the funds to outsource it, acknowledging with your artist where your weaker points are and where your stronger points are can be really useful. And I think at the kind of early artist development stage where maybe there isn't as much income being provided, I think there's not enough conversation around the value of representation. So when somebody is going out there and representing you, relationship managing, talking to gatekeepers, when you trust them to go into a room and represent you in a way that you feel completely confident with, there's value in that. And it might not be monetary value, because you could be in that artist development stage where live hasn't come together, there's no label deal, everything is self-funded. But I think it's worth managers for their own kind of self-worth in that, knowing that actually, even if there isn't a huge amount of income being generated there at the start, there is quite a bit of value in your representation and your role. And I think that can sometimes get missed, and it can lead managers who are at that early stage to maybe feel like it's not a hugely legitimate job until it gets to the really high earning stages. And for a lot of us here and a lot of members of Emma, when there's over 2,000 people being represented, we're talking about a completely different scale there for some people to others. But just from my experience of working with an artist who is completely brand new, and knowing a lot of artists who are still working with art, knowing a lot of managers who are still working with artists who are breaking, the value of representation, I think, is always worth a discussion, that it isn't just whatever is brought in a month and goes into a bank account. I'm going to move on to time management because I'm conscious of ours, Jack. I think time management is a really tricky thing for artist management, because when you are in campaign, I mean, you could do a 60-hour week consistently, because there's just so much to do. And then we get our lulls. Our artist is not on tour, but they're in the studio and you're working towards the next thing. What's your kind of viewpoint on how, with those waves that come naturally with our industry, how artist managers can kind of prioritize their time effectively and do in doing so kind of address the demands of the role, but also like really very much make it a priority to take care of their well-being as that wave goes up and down?
Definitely. I have a complicated relationship with time management. I'm not the best at it myself, but I continue to work on it and get better. I would sacrifice myself for my career a lot, and it's got me where I've got. But again, that's come often at the expense of my health, my relationships, and so forth. So the one thing I would say that is more important than any time management technique that I'm about to share with you is discipline. Discipline is the most important thing that comes when you're looking at time management. And the reason I say that is because if we're not disciplined in the way we show up for ourselves, then any technique that I share will be used maybe a couple of times and then kind of let go of. And with any technique, it takes 21 days to build a habit and 90 days to implement it. So you need to be disciplined and continue to show up with any technique, any habit, to embed it into your subconscious so it becomes second nature. So I think the first thing to look at is actually, I'll get to the specifics of 2 techniques that I've got to share today, but is actually how many people here, and again, please feel free to put a reaction if you are able to, how many people schedule your own time? How many people schedule time in for you? Okay, I can see 1 person, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I see 6 people out of 46. So, okay, maybe around 12 to 15% of people here are doing that. So that's great to see that percentage of people that are doing it. But for those that aren't, it's important that, like I said before, if you don't show up for yourself, you're not going to be able to show up for other people. So because again, you're going to be running on empty. So the one thing I always say is when you're looking at your diary, it's what do I need for myself to be able to operate my best? Do I need to go for a run? Do I need to check in with friends and family, whether that's in person, if you're away, phone calls to refill your cup up? Because again, when you're looking at time management, if you're running on empty, then all of these techniques or looking at things aren't going to help because you're not able to show up, because your creativity and productivity are down, because your stress and anxiety levels are up, which have an adverse impact on your creativity and productivity. So with that being said, the 2 techniques that I'm going to share today, the first one is all about the D. Innuendo not meant, but it works nonetheless. So all about the D is the 4 Ds that you look at. So any task that you have, like if you look at the list of things that you have on your agenda, any given moment, looking at them and then saying, can I do it? So is it urgent and important? Does it need to be dealt with now? Am I firefighting? Is it something I need to get back to close a deal? Is it something I need to do to get the release live on DSPs? Is it something we need to put out on the artist's social media account to take advantage of, I don't know, voting or something to help support the career? So if it's do it, then you do it. Delay it is the second one. So do it is the first D, delay it is the second one. Is it something that can be delayed? Is it something that is important but not time sensitive? And that may be looking at artist campaigns, ideas, creativity, artwork ideas. It may be ideas around set list. It may be something that isn't urgent, but you will get to, but you need to just put it to one side for the moment so you can deal with the urgent stuff. The third D is delay it. So what can I do? Oh, sorry, third D is delegate it. Apologies there. So the third D is this something that I can offload to someone else to free up my time and my schedule? So that may be delegating it if you have an assistant, that may be delegating it to the fans to do, that may be using websites such as Fiverr or freelancer.com to create stuff, that may be tapping into AI that then can create a press release for you or generate user-generated content. It's like, let's use this technology as it's coming because we can't remove AI. We have to embrace it at some point. So it's like, what can I delegate to free up my time? And then the final one is delete it. If it's not important and it's not worth your time, remove it, because there's a lot of stuff that we deal with and navigate that actually isn't worth our time. So again, just to remind you of the 4 Ds, it's do it if it's urgent and important. Delay it if it's urgent, but not, if it's important but not urgent, so that you can get around to it when you've got more time to focus on it. Delegate it if it's something that can be offloaded to someone or something, in the case of AI, and then delete it if it doesn't work. And then the second technique, just before we go to the next question, which helps to organize the order of importance of things, is the rank and yank technique. So there's 4 steps to this. The first step is to write a list down of everything you need to do. And I suggest either doing this at the start of your day or the end of your day for the following day. So the first step, write a list of everything you need to do. The second step is to actually rank it in order. So for some people, there may be 10 items on the list, another person, there may be 100. But what I want you to then do is just rank in order. It's like, okay, I need to get all the label copy done for the release. I need to upload all the artwork to the DSPs or to the label services to get that through. And again, you've got your own list, so you'll know what's important. So rank it in order of importance from 1 downwards. The third tip is to remove everything under number 5, so 6 onwards, remove, because it's not urgent and it's not important. So you want to remove that from your window so that you're focused on the top 5. And then the most important of that is, once you've got those top 5, is to actually look at your schedule, look at your diary for that day, if you're doing it in the morning, or the following day, if you're doing it the night before, and actually work out how much time is needed for that task and when is the most opportune time for you to do that task. So if you're an artist, it may be that you need to relay down vocals for a track, and that may be better done in the afternoon or the evening because your voice is better. It may be for managers that you're more creative in the morning, say between 11 and 1. So that's when you need to focus on the creative task. It may be that you're really good for a power hours, I like to call them, whacking through like emails and stuff. So that's when you schedule that in, and then just work it around that so that, again, you're getting the maximum usage of your time, but also working with your strengths and working with your body clock to honor, actually, this is when I'm most creative, this is when I'm most productive. And then that hopefully will help from a time management perspective. Sorry, that's a lot that I've just dumped there. I hope that all made sense.
That's great, Jack. I'm literally scribbling notes as you're speaking there. I love that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to do one more question because I'm conscious that I do want to leave time for Q&A, and I maybe would take this opportunity to encourage anyone to, if you want to put a question into the chat, and also when we move across to Q&A, of course, just raise your hand. But I think there's a lot of unique pressures with artist management. And like I said at the top of our session, it is a job that's very unlike many others that are out there. And, you know, I think certainly we could probably spend 45 minutes speaking about the financial pressures of being an artist manager. And there's so much conversation around how difficult it is for artists to make a living. And I think it would be kind of shocking for a lot of the general public to see what the percentage that the manager gets of that is behind the scenes. And I'm really conscious that that might be something that is causing mental health issues for some people who are on the call today. You know, financial instability is a real stressor. How can we proactively assist managers in addressing the mental health challenges before they escalate, with more of a preventative approach, not just for stresses around financial, but also just stress around workload, as you said, you know, the prioritizing of time, but also kind of that the huge, one would see it as opportunity, but sometimes it can feel like a huge kind of weight that you're responsible for another person's career and their trajectory. So yeah, it would be good to hear your thoughts on how we address those challenges kind of proactively and preventively before things escalate for the manager.
Yeah, I think it's hard because everyone is in a different state, in a different space, and that can be minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day. There's many things that I can think of, so I'll just list off a few of the top ones for now to actually be mindful of our time so we can get to the Q&A. Is being a manager is often a lonely environment. Often most managers work for themselves. So actually having a community, like the community that AIM provides in Ireland, like the community that the Music Managers Forum provides in the UK and EMA are providing, is actually having a network of individuals, because your network equals your net worth. And so tapping into individuals that can support you, that can be there to offload and that understand the pressures and the challenges, can be very important. There's a caveat to that, is that sometimes you may find that a manager may have an ulterior motive, because if you're complaining about an artist, they may then think, oh, this is an opportunity to poach the artist. So there's navigating that as well. But for the ultimate part, or the main part, finding a community, and if it's not managers, people that you can speak to offload. Also, as you said, it's like, how can we deal with a problem when it shows up rather than when it blows up? And I think actually regularly checking in with yourself every morning, being like, how am I doing today? What am I doing today? Like, what do I need today to be able to operate? Having those questions that you can ask yourself each and every morning, so that when you wake up, it may be, you know, sometimes we all have those days where we don't want to get out of bed, we don't want to do stuff, and that's okay. It's honoring your feelings, but not necessarily becoming them. Don't suppress them, don't push them away, because they're going to come out in another way, shape, or form. So actually checking in with yourself each and every day to actually assess, how am I doing? What am I running on today? Is my gas tank on empty? Am I running on little to no fuel? What can I do? What do I need to fill my cup up, as I mentioned earlier? What are the things I can do to support myself? Is it actually taking some time off, putting my out of office on for 12 hours, putting my out of office on for the weekend? Is it actually I need to take a step back? Or is it I just need a run for an hour, I just need a nice nutritious meal, I just need a lovely chat with my family? What is it that can fill your cup up? Because again, we're constantly giving, and there will always be someone that takes. So it's like, well, what is being given to us to fill us up when everyone else is taking from us? So actually checking in with yourself and seeing, well, what do I need today? How am I feeling today? What's going on for me today? So that you can assess that and make an informed decision about what your day will look like as a result of where you're at in terms of that. And then again, I think it's not being afraid to ask for help. I think the stigma has changed, and I know I'm very conscious that we've got a lot of different cultures and a lot of different countries coming here, and I have to be mindful of the caveats that come in with that, with religious differences, with cultural differences, with country differences, that different places and different spaces may have different relationships to mental health, even though it has improved. But I would definitely recommend, if you're not feeling great, it's to ask for help. It's to encourage people to seek support, seek advice, whether it be therapists like myself, going to organizations, trade bodies that may have access or signposting to support, going to your doctor, your GP to get support and guidance, going to health services, going on Google, looking in your local catchment area for support services as well. Unfortunately, I don't know everyone's regional differences to be able to signpost to everyone, so I'm going to refrain from that in case I give the wrong information. But again, people are out there to help, and that's why I do what I do now. It's just being comfortable in your discomfort and being vulnerable enough to say, I'm struggling right now, I need help. And if you can do that and take that first step, which is often the hardest, hopefully there will be people there to be able to support and signpost you and give you the support you need, so that you can navigate your way through any issues you have, whether that is mental health, as Gill just referred to, financial health that's going on, other issues that may be coming up, and that support will hopefully be provided to help you navigate that phase in your life.
Thanks for that, Jack. Michelle, I'm conscious of time. Are we handing over to Q&A now?
Yes, let's do it. If anybody wants to ask the question, please feel free to unmute yourself or send a question in the chat and I will read it for you.
Hi, I would like to ask.
Hi, Chelsea.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to get some thoughts on, some people might have seen today that one of the MMF board members has come out and proposed a model where managers now get paid via points on the master, the same way that a producer would. And I found that really interesting, because, you know, this conversation about the workload and how much managers now have to do in comparison to the last like 13 years that I've been in the industry, you know, our workload has increased so much. But I spoke to a few music lawyers about, you know, is there any scope for a manager to ask for a higher percentage on their management fee? And it was met with a very resounding no. which is fine. But considering we take on the role of a live agent and, you know, a publishing company and a record label, and none of these are actually really our jobs, it's something I've thought about. And especially when, you know, it wasn't that long ago that songwriters were also told that they should just stay in their lane and they wouldn't receive any extra payment until in the US they banded together to make that a fairer space for songwriters to be paid. So I just would love some thoughts from people about how they feel about a manager being cut in on a percentage of the master as fair remuneration for the additional workload we have to do.
I'm happy to answer, but Gill, did you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more about the multiple roles that a lot of managers now need to take on, you know, and like that, I was in a label for years, and I was used to there being a manager, a label, a booking. There was always a team, you know, there was always like a prong. And now with the democratization of digital, there are so many self-releasing artists, there's so many artists who want to stay independent, but with that, the manager can often become the label, become the booking agent. And I've had those conversations here in Ireland around, you know, different types of models, you know, retainer models. I've seen a few people who are doing that so that there's guaranteed payment, and that does go up if it's a better year, it stays steady. And also, you know, around kind of the what's been brought up today around the points, you know, I think really it's about having a broader conversation about what is fair remuneration for us. I think that gets missed time and time again.
Yeah.
Of course, we have to, you know, it's easier to get the conversation going if we lead with the artists, but there is such a misunderstanding about how difficult it is for us at kind of the end of the food chain to also make a living out of it. So what I would kind of celebrate from that being even tabled is that it's just bringing it to the front that there's a need for managers to be paid fairly, and to be, for the change in our working conditions to be recognized. That would be my feedback on it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think just to add in from the wonderful stuff that Gill said is that, again, different countries have different models. In the UK, it's 20%. In Mexico, it's on average 30%. In America, you may have two managers, a business manager and a different manager that's 10% each. There's different models in different countries. And I have a few friends, and we often say that being a manager, especially when you get to the more established level, you become more of a CEO than a manager. You're managing multiple businesses. And actually, when you start to look at the other facets that start to come in, whether it's you look at Rihanna with the Fenty line, or you look at Robbie Williams that came out last week with a documentary on Netflix, it's like, well, these are things that are going off often beyond the traditional artist manager role in a music capacity. And you're actually seeing quite a few of these managers now actually create partnerships and new businesses in conjunction with the artist, where it's a 50-50 business venture. And so whilst the traditional manager split may still be the same as in your respective countries, you're seeing new workarounds. And so I applaud what Kwame's announced today with Dave Rajan and the other individual, and just looking at different models, because I think that, again, sometimes different models have to be put forward and not all will work, and they may work for some and not for others. But if we can try those different models, it may help to find a better way to financially remunerate and give different pathways, which then in turn hopefully will improve mental health and well-being for managers as well.
Thank you so much. Antonio Cardenas, if you can please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for making this happen, first of all. I'm a manager in Berlin, and I deal with neurodivergent artists. So it's not always easy to discuss things. So I've been dealing a lot in the last year on how to deal with this specifically as well, because I am not a psychologist. I am a manager, and you have to deal with a lot of the issues also, or challenges, so to speak, of the other person, because you have a very close relationship to them. What advice would you give someone like me, and other managers also dealing with neurodivergent artists, and maybe resources, how to move forward, and how we can all learn and grow in that as well.
I think it's a really important question, and I think that the music industry in particular has a higher percentage, relatively speaking, than general population of people that identify or have been diagnosed with a neurodivergence diagnosis. And so I think one thing that comes to mind, and if I have time, I'll find it, David Joseph, the CEO of Universal in the UK, created a great document with his team about how to support neurodivergence. And he has a special interest in that because his own son has a high level of autism. And so that is some great literature that, if we can't find the link today, if you type in David Joseph neurodivergence document in Google, that will come up, but we'll try and find it and put it in there for you. But in terms of doing that, I think that, again, I never like to say people are uneducated. I just always like to say people are undereducated. So dependent on the neurodivergence that each individual has, whether it's Asperger's, ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, autism, depending on the levels, it's actually trying to find ways of actually equipping yourself with the knowledge. Because I always say that actually a neurodivergence is a superpower. It's an absolute gift. It's just how you harness that. It's a lot of people that are neurodivergent are very creative, but not necessarily very good on the business or the administrative side. So actually harnessing their talents and acknowledging their areas of development, which is what I call it, other people may call it weaknesses, and acknowledging that and making sure that you give space and permission for that. And also, if you identify that within yourself as someone who is neurodivergent, acknowledging that within yourself and saying, okay, these are my strengths, these are my areas of development. Can I outsource my areas of development to an accountant, to a lawyer, to an assistant that maybe has good business and administrative skills, so I can focus on the creative side, or where my skills and my superpowers can really be harnessed? And I think if you can read the document, which I see has already just been put in the chat box there, and then also just educate yourself more and then look at how you can complement that, I think that will hopefully go a long way.
Thank you. We have a few questions coming in. Are there any books, literature you recommend on the topic? That question from Tineke.
Cheeky self-plug. I have a book that I wrote myself called The Shitty Committee. And it's a book just about the negative critics in your head. I'll put a link in the chat now. And it's basically the internal, the negative voices, the company you keep is in the external, and then the consumable, what we're consuming in terms of food, but also what we're consuming in terms of social media and so on and so forth, and how you can protect yourself and support yourself to do that. Additionally, there is another book called, I think it's called Sound Advice. I need to find the link in a second, but it's called Sound Advice by Lucy Heyman. And they talk about support within the music industry as well, and how you can support yourself and others to look after your mental health and well-being. So they'd be two main forms. And then there's general books all about the music business that are more broad in terms of information, because sometimes I find that the mental health problems come because we feel like imposters, that we don't know information. So it's how can we support? Oh, I see that. That may be the book. Let me find it. I'll double check and just check. But yeah, they're two books. The Shitty Committee, the one that I shared, and Sound Advice would be the two that I would recommend.
Thank you. The next question is how to cope with many rejections while being a booking manager. How do you deal with it?
Gill, do you feel you want to put some of your pearls of wisdom? I'm happy to answer, but
I think a lot of it is it's just the nature of any creative industry is a high percentage of rejection. And so I think if you can just get the context of the industry you're working in and not take it personally, and not take it, that you're doing something wrong, but that there are a limited amount of opportunities all you can do is present the artist as best you can, and it's very rarely going to be down to you as the manager that the artist did not get that opportunity, unless you've done an absolutely, you know, terrible job representing them and you just haven't done your job properly. But I think that the biggest trick for me was learning to just not take it personally. And sometimes those things that you're pitching for are with people you have personal relationships with, and you're kind of hoping that that will help, and it can get very confusing, and that's where those boundaries need to come in. But being really, really pragmatic and aware of the landscape that you're operating in, and the amount of opportunity that there is, and the amount of people who are going for that opportunity, does help kind of diminish that internalizing of the rejection. But, you know, people talk about artists feel it so hard. The manager feels it first. The manager gets thumped first and then has to put a nice spin on it for the artist. So we're constantly getting clobbered with the rejections, and then we need to interpret it in a way that feels like positive affirmation for the artist. So I think it is a really difficult thing to deal with. And I think rejection in any industry is difficult to deal with, but we're in an industry where it's can almost be every day. And I think that just trying to stay grounded in the fact that it's rarely personal and that you are in an industry that is highly competitive is how I go about it.
And just to add to what Gill has kindly shared, is there's a mantra that I always say to myself: rejection is redirection. Rejection is redirection. Rejection is redirection. If it's a no, no as the acronym stands for next opportunity. And so actually redirecting yourself. I remember when I was a manager and we were trying to get an artist that I co-managed called Gabrielle Aplin signed. We released 3 EPs. The first EP went in at number 20, the second EP went in at number 14, and labels showed interest, but it was like, it petered out, and then you feel like, oh God, like I'm not doing enough. Third EP, we sold 80,000 units. Then we had 12 offers on the table, 7 publishing offers, so on and so forth. But again, you continue to persevere, you will overcome, as Gill said. And the other thing to remember is, and this is something I was really bad at, is my identity was so intrinsically linked to who I was in my career that I relinquished my power, and I gave my career the power to determine my mental health and well-being. So when I was successful or perceived to be successful, I felt great. When I wasn't successful or I faced rejection, I felt awful. And actually detaching yourself, so don't attach your worth to the outcome, can actually help manage your stability in terms of your mental health and well-being. So actually sitting there and thinking to yourself, I am not the decisions or the outcomes that come from it. I am not defined by whether someone says yes or no, where someone approves of me or rejects my application for funding, for a deal, for a support slot, for whatever you're going in for. And so if you can do that, just realize, don't take it personally. More important, don't make it personal. And that would be the other bit of advice I wish I had someone told me that 15 years ago. I'd be a much better, healthier person than I am today.
Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you so much, Gill. We have a few more minutes and we're gonna do some breakout rooms. So there will be Jess from Emma, Aga from Emma, myself from Emma, in one of the in 3 different rooms, Jack in another one, and Gill in another one. So please bear with me while I set up the breakout rooms. If you have to leave, thank you so much for attending this masterclass. And otherwise, please bear with me until I deal with this. 1 second.
Just to reiterate, Michelle, hi, I'm
Yep.
Jess from Emma, and thank you all for being here. I've just shared a link to Jack's book as well. Thank you so much, Jack. It's been really, really useful. And also want to say that there is a contact sheet in the chat. So if you can check it out and add your email address if you want to share, it's just an easier way to get in touch with everybody. And if anyone's asked a question that you particularly want to answer or send them an email on afterwards, then that's a good, useful way of doing things. as Michelle said, we'll be doing breakout rooms now. And I just want to also reiterate that if you're not a member of your local MMF or organization that is a member of Emma, then please look into it, and feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. I'm just going to share link. Sorry, one of those classic things where I wrote it out earlier in a place I couldn't get to. Nope, that's not it. There you go. Yeah, look into your local organization, because it is really useful. They can give more specific advice on or hopefully can give more specific advice on what resources exist within your country or locality that we can't. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Thanks again for being here. And Michelle, feel free to throw us into some breakout.